Going live. I don't know if you will be able to see this. If I talk to somebody and they tell me that I'm buffering, then what I'll do is what I always do. I will just go ahead and delete this and do this as an upload. I'm trying not to do that. And I'm hoping that I get enough energy to talk about Costa Rica and some of the craziness, because there's some things that have happened here you need to know about, particularly if you're ever thinking about coming on a vacation here. Okay, I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. Uh, if you know me, you know that I used to write a column for Pathos called No Longer Quivering that dealt with the evangelical quiverful movement. I'm still going to keep covering those things, but I am taking sort of a little break from some of that. So I may be covering some more silly and entertaining things and more art and things than that. Yesterday, I had something of a wake up call, but before I talk about that, let me just say, hey, Dances in the Rain. These are just my opinions. Don't bully anybody. Let me say hit like, subscribe, whatever you feel like doing. I would be appreciative of. Okay, yesterday I had kind of an epiphany day yesterday. It was not a good day. Um, and it's led me to where I am today with the whole Katie Joy mess and everything else. You know, Katie Joy yesterday was going hard for Robert Shin and just saying all kinds of just really out there things. And I was looking at that yesterday. I was looking at Michelle Goes Live, and some other people, and talking about them, ranting to my husband. And he and I have been knocking heads lately because he's had an opportunity to go to Indonesia with a friend of his. I just don't want him to go. I don't mind him going to Indonesia. I just don't like doing it last second. Even with my mileage miles, to get a ticket was going to be buku big bucks. Yesterday, I checked. I could have gotten him a ticket for 3 or 4 thousand, but it involved a 35-hour or more travel day. And the ones that weren't a 35-hour travel day were 19, 20, 21, $22,000. And I'm like, that's like 2/3 of the price of our car. He lived in Indonesia for 3 years, okay, as a child. And I'm sure it's changed dramatically. And I know he wants to go back and see that. And I told him that's fine, but let's go ahead and schedule this. Let's just not do this last minute stuff that costs a fortune. Let's save up for this. Let's do this later. Let's do it next year. Schedule it for next year and I'll go with you. But don't do this last second thing with a buddy of yours that's kind of all over the place. And so we were talking about this yesterday, and it wasn't the most friendly of conversations. One of the things about me in the last 2 years, especially, is that I lose my temper at the drop of a hat in a way that I never did before. It has to do with the stroke. I keep telling him it's like not, um, it was like butting heads frequently. And it's kind of like the wires in my brain have no insulation now. You know how you plug in a wire to charge something and it's got this lovely plastic coating. My brain now, it's like it lacks that. And so the wires spark and stuff. So I do tend to just lose my mind over stupid shit sometimes. And I'm not the only one in this household that does that. So he's in his 70s. I really don't want him traveling by himself. Not that I'm a fit travel companion, but two people are usually better than one. You're traveling to a place that has a pretty high risk, according to the State Department. So I talked him out of it yesterday, and he said, okay, I'll do this, but I need you to do something too. And I said, what do you need me to do? And he said that he wanted me to never talk about Katie Joy Paulson without a crystal ball ever again on this channel. He doesn't want that her name crossing my lips. He doesn't want me thinking about What thing did she do now? And I get it, I really do, because I think it's really easy to become obsessed over these things. All you have to do is look at the behavior of Charlotte on the web towards Michelle. Michelle goes live. And you can see it's easy to get obsessed with somebody and something in some situation. So I'm going to honor him. I'm not going to say another thing. I may add to my frequently asked questions because people will ask me all the time about her, and I'll hear all kinds of weird assumptions and get questions where people will say, well, didn't you and her do this? Didn't this happen? It's like many times it's kind of like it's something that requires a nuanced answer. So I'll probably still answer those questions in frequently answered questions post at the top of this, at the, on my channel. He wanted me to give up talking about quiverful and religion too. He was after me to do that, but I said, no, I'm going to continue to talk about that. But he is right. All of these things have just added to being depressed for me. They haven't been positives. And he's right. If you take in negative all the time, it starts to really cloud your vision. Yesterday, after all this, we're like making our adjustments with each other and saying, yeah, I'll do this, but I want you to do this. We did some of that yesterday. And it was helpful because I read a book a couple of years ago called Crucial Conversations, or was it Critical Conversations? Critical Conversations. And it was all about how we communicate with each other. And let me tell you something, communicating by yelling is not good. And some of that went down yesterday. There was some yelling going on both sides. And oh, look at my lovely Kirkland brand drink. It makes me laugh. Kirkland here. But they say they're not affiliated with Costco. Bonk. They are. They carry a lot of the same products. So after the yelling and the compromising, and I did a lot of the yelling, lie. We took the rest of the day and we went off to Playa Dante and Las Catalinas yesterday, which, if you saw my Twitter pictures, well, it's not, I don't think it's what she did, Java Man. It's going to be what I do. My husband has given me grief about how much energy I've put into talking about Katie Joy, about answering her, all of that crap. That as of today, I have deleted off so many things. Hey, bless Chris. I've deleted off, like I went into Reddit and firebombed my Reddit so that I can't even see the WACB thing. I put a lot of people on my Twitter account on mute. I'm just over the fighting with everybody, the communities that are doing it. I firebombed off a couple people, well, more than a couple, like 3 to 6 months ago because I was just sick of watching them fight. I did it this morning with anybody who's tracking and beating up KJ, which God bless you. You guys do a much better job of it than I do, but I can't participate anymore. It's just way too depressing. My husband's right. I think all of this is adding to it. He wants me even to put down my book, which I finally started letting him read some of it. And I don't like letting him read anything I write because he is, he's right about some things, but he's right. He's right about a few things. I was wondering if Josh Duggar had a cell phone in prison, where did he charge it? Do cells have power outlets? Most cells do have power outlets because you can buy things at the commissary in most prisons, like clock radios, even little televisions and things that do take charging. So there are electrical outlets in the cells in most prisons now. It's not like everybody is going to Alcatraz or some, horrible hole that doesn't have those things now. A lot of prisons do. I mean, they would almost have to. I mean, there's some prisoners I know that are in there that have nebulizers. Those things have to be plugged in. So Josh, that's an interesting thing about Josh. There's a lot of crap being said about him and this cell phone thing. Guards bring cell phones in, the cheapy $50 ones all the time, and sell them to inmates for large sums of money. And you're not supposed to be able to use it. You're not supposed to possess it. It's in violation. But these guys do it. They get away with it. They hide the damn thing. You know, it's the more I learn about prison, the more it seems like a place that I don't even want to visit, much less ever be part of or in. God bless those people that are in those things, even if they have done the crime. I mean, they're paying now. They're paying with their freedom. So KJ, the only thing she's done is she has gone off the deep end. Every time I think there's a low, she says, "Hold my Adderall, hold my wine glass," and she does something that's just over the top. And so not only did I block a ton of people on Twitter and mute a ton more so I wouldn't see much about her, I went in my Facebook and I unfriended a pile of people. I blocked people. I blocked people's channels. I unsubscribed to just about everything that has to do with KJ. Of course, if they built it like a Faraday cage, then radio stations, cell phones would be effective. Java band, that's an interesting idea, but I don't know that they will ever do that because that costs money. And most prisons these days, as far as I can tell, are being run for profit by companies that are charging the states for this. And they're trying to get away with the cheapest they can do, cheaper foods, cheap labor, working the inmates. There's a lot of ways they do in order to save money. And I get it, it's expensive, make these guys work and do something. But at the same time, you had to provide at least a basic level of sustenance for everybody in there. And guys like Josh are going to be usually going to be lifelong criminals. There's a lot of recidivism at that for those type of crimes. I don't know why, but there is. And even chemical castration does not help. They keep reoffending. The offender stats for people who do that stuff to kids is just so high. So, if you don't see me around talking about KJ, that's what's going on. I brokered a deal with my husband about that. He pointed out the negativity and how I've been not quite myself because of my mother and that whole situation, and then having to go here and do that. And yeah, he's right. I'm kind of at the end of my emotional rope every time I think I'm starting to recover. Did you see that someone took over her Twitter account? No, I did not. I did not. But I know there are a lot of people that have been doing that, taking over other people's Twitter accounts. I saw one the other day that had taken over Donald Trump's. And it's a bad day today because I've been sitting here constantly refreshing the news because there's stuff there going on too. I've been overhearing and saying things about KJ for a long time now. I would never tell you what to do or who to talk about, but I gotta say I agree with your hubs on this. Bliss, once he sat down and he started talking to me, I agreed with him. I said, this is something that is just the worst time consuming thing. And I'm trying to get back my life. I'm trying to walk again. I'm trying to garden again. I'm trying to do all the things I used to do with my life before the pandemic and before I had my thalamic stroke. I want to regain my life again. Banks are failing. Yes, they are. Java man. I had a conversation with my son via email. He thinks everybody ought to buy Bitcoin. I am not entirely sure that I agree with that because there's been a lot of ups and downs in Bitcoin, and then they have that, not NFTs, but what do they call those things? Or was it NFTs? NFTs, yeah. Investing in a little picture and then assuming it's going to go up. That is, I don't know. I'm old fashioned, I guess. And it took me a while to even get to where I am with how I do my finances. I'm pretty good at investing. I'm not so good doing the day to day. That's my husband's thing. He's really good at that. He's got that kind of an analytical mind. I'm kind of all over the place. And he's been pointing out to me that I've given up on a lot of things that I used to do. So I'm trying to get back to all of that, including art, especially painting, quilt making, all of that stuff. And try not to obsessively, I'm getting ready to do it again, obsessively check and see what's going on today because I'm quite nervous because of all the stuff that's been going on in the US with, you guessed it, the presidency. The problem was that 2007 Viking crisis never really ended. The Fed's actions marked the end of the quantitative easing, which started due to the crisis in 2007. Yes, and I don't know about where you guys are, but where I lived in Culpeper, Virginia, we had a neighborhood right behind mine where the houses tanked in value. At one point, they were selling them for close to $1 million. And they were these big McMansion-y things with lots of space. And we're sitting in our little 1,600 square foot Cape Cod looking at those things going, who needs that? And it was kind of funny because our neighborhood, the prices stayed stable even with the tanking of the price. And it's kind of funny because when we sold our house, we got 3.5 times what we paid for it. So it was a pretty good investment. And somebody else bought it from us and lived there a year and then turned around and sold it for 4 times. And then I saw the other day someone had sold the house for close to $500,000. And I'm kind of like, we built that house for $93,000. And at the time, that was this huge note that we were not going to be able to handle unless we had more income coming in. And we were both working then. So the quiverful stuff, I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm actually quite frightened for politics to make sure that I just want to make sure that Mike Pence does not win the presidency. What do I hold against Pence? Well, I know Pence's church. I know the church he goes to in Virginia because it was a church that was affiliated with our old church. So I know a lot of the theology. I know a lot of the things that they think are just, obscene or whatever, and the things they want to put in place. Scarily like The Handmaid's Tale. And I don't want to live in that kind of world. There are some things going on that I am not so worried about that world is worried about. But there's some things about Pence and his beliefs that I know deep down, and I'm going to do a deep dive one day soon and tell you what those beliefs are. Because his wife teaches at the school at Emmanuel, the school that is connected to the church. And I've been to the church there actually a few times, well before Pence became even slightly famous, to see Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship conferences. I assume that you also hope that Donald Trump does not win the presidency again either. Java man, exactly, because this newest bank crisis, I think you could lay at his feet because he had stripped away the Dodd-Frank laws. And while they were imperfect, certainly, they were more of a protection than anything going on right now. I think there's a danger in stripping away laws that govern how corporations do business because we've seen what happens. We've seen how they screw people. And I don't know about you guys, but I try my damnedest not to participate in things that do harm to others. Yesterday, I bought a new purse, something I have not done in Costa Rica here. I had my pile of purses I brought from the States or I made here. And I've never been a designer purse person at all. I got to tell you that. So I bought a purse, paid way too much money for it, but it's recycled. I like recycling. Also, the head of SVB successfully lobbied for reduction in regulations that lead to the end of SVB. Yeah. See, that's the thing. When you have these big corporations, you have these banks, you have people taking advantage of it. And God knows the government isn't always that useful either. Look what happened during COVID when they started allowing all those loans, those PPP loans to small businesses. And we found out Miss Crystal Ball took out one of those, but she's hardly the only one. There's a lady on my super trashy favorite reality show, Love After Lockup, that took out three of them. Three. It totaled like $60,000 or some ridiculous amount. Because when the show started, I was like, how is she paying $11,000 for her little man's designer clothing? Well, I know how she did it now. Also, Congress people took out those loans. Yes, I know they did. So the people that could have probably used those loans never got them. And being here in Costa Rica, sitting back and watching all of this is kind of scary. Yeah, I don't want Pence to win. I don't want DeSantis to win. I don't want Trump to win. I want the Republicans to come out with a better candidate. I wouldn't be opposed to someone like even Romney again, but John Huntsman would be a good candidate. There are some Republicans that are actually pretty decent people, and I think would do a good job of it. It's just there's been so much anger on both sides and so many lies and so much manipulation that we're ending up with some crazy stuff. Toad for president. Oh my goodness, can you imagine what his platform would be? Both parties need to have better candidates. Absolutely, Bliss. I am not thrilled to vote for a re-election of Biden. I'm not. I wasn't thrilled to vote for him this time, but it was kind of like hold your nose and pull the lever. And he has not worked out the way I would like. You know, we're about to get into this, be pulled into the Ukrainian war, which I think is one thing to support them. It's a whole different ballgame to send troops on the ground. And I hope they don't send troops on the ground. It could be another Vietnam. Can't do another 4 years of Biden. Yeah, I know you agree. I agree. You pick Trump over here, and it's saying a lot for me because I'm not a huge fan of Trump's. Yeah, and that's really where it was. My son picked Trump over Biden. My daughter and I picked Biden over Trump. My husband did too. And so we're really, hey, Celine, we're really divided in the U.S. over all of this. And I had a big epiphany sitting there Sunday night. Sunday nights, we usually go to the Volcano Lounge. It's on the beach and listen to various friends play music. And it's okay. I'm not into it because when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was in a band for a while that played bars. So I had plenty of that at a young age. So I'm less in love with that than my husband. There's a growing number of men going Southeast Asia to find wives. Celine, yes, they are. Even some Christian guys, because they want subservience. And women in the States aren't doing that anymore, a lot of them. Even the quote Christian ones, even the ones that are part of Quiverful. When I was part of the Quiverful movement, I knew so many women that said they were fully submitted to their husbands, and I would watch them go to manipulate the hell out of the husbands and just make a mockery of everything they said they were believing in. I tried it and was not able to do it. My husband and I made us miserable for about 2 years. We both were miserable. So that was another thing that was really interesting about him twisting my arm not to speak about Katie anymore and to just completely disassociate myself from the anti-movement is I don't totally agree with him on everything, but on that I think he's right. I think there's so many. Are those marriages successful? Do they just take all their money? I don't know. Java Man, I think that they're about as successful as they are on the outside, because when I was looking at divorce statistics writing my book, I saw that in the religious world, the divorce stats are actually a little bit higher than they are in the secular heathen world. It's actually a little lower. And divorce is never a good thing, but neither is staying with someone that you don't have that connection to. I love Asian people, but I find the whole thing kind of predatory because these guys go for super young girls and they're in their 70s. Celine, that is exactly right. That's why I'm not comfortable with the whole idea of mail order brides. All it takes is a little watching of 90 Day Fiance where you get to see how wrong and creepy that is. Um, it's so predatory. I think also the whole idea of prison pen pals that marry is kind of predatory too. There's some predation on both sides of the issue. So that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. And here's the thing, I was talking about this a lot yesterday. We both picked up some very bad habits when we were quiverful. And one of the ones that we picked up the hardest was the idea that I was 100% responsible for everything with the house and the yard. Okay, he mows now, does a few things like that. But a lot of the gardening, I still have an expectation of that. And I self guilt myself. So, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make my life a lot less complicated, if that makes any sense. My question is, who is the predator in that one? Theoretical, the women could con them out of their money too. It seems risky for the other. Yeah, there is some risk. I was talking to a Filipino lady about the whole thing of inappropriate age gaps, and she said it made her cringe to see a super old, usually white guy with a Filipino or a Thai woman or what have you. I got to talk about that here for Costa Rica too. It's a problem here. So many times, and I saw this the other night, okay, where I was. Like I said, we go watch music on Sunday nights. I usually don't say a whole lot, even though these are people I've known really well because some of the stuff you're talking about right now. There's a guy he was a world class surfer. He was in a couple of surfing movies that owns a shop here where he makes custom surfboards. He's starting to suffer from dementia, but he, like so many of these guys here in their 70s, hook up and or marry these young Tico women or these young women from Honduras or wherever, Central America. There's a movement called Passport Bros with usually black guys traveling to actually date appropriately. And if there is an age gap, it is still appropriate. That's interesting. Does he make them from kids? No, Java man. He makes them hardcore the old fashioned way. And I think he's starting to retire some. His son is involved with that. He's been involved with the whole surfing community for years. But he has that. He dates younger women, younger women. Well, now he's getting older and senile enough where the young ones won't date him any longer. So he is fishing in my age group and a little bit younger, the 50 to 60 range. And it gets kind of so many of these guys, they lose their wives in some way. The wife dies or they divorce them. And they get in that 60-ish and older range and they come here. They move here once retirement happens, thinking they're going to live on $20 a month and nothing. And it doesn't work out for them well at all. And they all end up marrying these 20-something Tico women here. And they have a baby or two with them. And then the Tika girl divorces them. And the way the divorce laws work here, these guys lose everything, because it's a very patriarchal system. And if you marry someone, you're expected to support them until that child is 18. I'm 36 and physically cannot garden anymore because of my back. If my husband can understand, so can yours. He wouldn't want to put you in a position to get hurt or in pain, I wouldn't think. Listen, we talked about that. I told him I'm willing to do container gardening. I can do that forever. But as far as like going back to my garden there and redoing it, that's not happening. I'm going to just plant some cacti there and just let that go wild. And if I do garden at small patches over time, over a long period, that's all I can do. I don't get much done. I just ask my hubs clears out the debris, leaves out of the garden, where to dig my holes. I think I'm going to do the Tico thing in just a little while, and I'm going to burn that because it's full of different dead plants now because of dry season. Just going to burn it, and then I'm going to see if I can get him to rototill it, and I will plant it with sunflowers and cactuses and just let it go because I'm growing 50,000 tons of potatoes anymore. I'm not doing any of that. And for a while, I was growing stuff that you can't get here. Growing like American sweet potatoes. I was growing American corn, those sort of things. Now I'm not used to that. Been watching people harvesting potatoes. It is kind of addictive. I love Asian women, but I find it concerning when I heard one of these women say in the Philippines, age doesn't matter. Of course it's legal, but come on. Yeah, exactly. 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 They're my favorite too. They do. They do. They need to be somewhere more wild, I think. Um, and when you grow sunflowers, you see all kinds of wonderful birds. That's one thing I like about growing sunflowers. I used to grow them back in my garden back home where I had a square foot garden that was very easy to keep up. Here, it doesn't work so well. I've tried it. Gardening like the US doesn't work here. Watching people grow and harvest mushrooms is fascinating. I don't even like mushrooms. Bliss! I had a friend that he grew the kind that you can get high from, and he would trade them for weed and made out like a bandit. He tried to explain to me one time how to grow them. It's actually pretty easy to grow them. Like I'm 23 and I couldn't imagine having sex with someone over the age of 45 at the oldest. Celine, it ain't pretty. I'm in my 60s. I'm married to someone who is 71. I'm just going to say it ain't pretty. Sometimes it's close your eyes and think of England, as they used to say. Um, so there's that. And these young women here are having sex with these guys. We live a stone's throw from a brothel, a legal brothel here. I can go stand on the pool deck and get on my tippy toes and look over the fence, and I can see them across the main road. I can see the traffic going in and out, and it's pretty interesting. And it's kind of awful at the same time because the women are all young. They're from desperately poor places like Nicaragua or El Salvador, and they're supporting their family and sending money back to those countries, supporting them by working in prostitution. But I will say it's legal here. You just have to be registered. You have to register with the government. You have to undergo regular health inspections, testing. And I think that's pretty a safe way to do it if you're going to do it. I know older men here that they do not date and marry the young ticos. They go to the brothel. Because I was pretty surprised at what one told me. He said it's only $30. I was like, what? Angela, it's been kind of really, really, really rough kind of a couple of days for me. So many Asian women have always been pleasant to me. They're very pleasant. But so at 17, you needed a signature to get married in Tennessee. You know, where I'm from in Louisiana, guess what? You just need a parental signature. You could be a year old and marry. Your parents just need to confirm that. And when they confirm that and they sign the paperwork, guess what? You can get married. And I think that's really scary. If you're going to have an age gap, I heard it's half your age plus 7. So 38 will be the youngest for me. I have no interest in young people for that purposes. If something happened to my husband tomorrow, today, and it could, he's 71. You know, I already told him, I said, for me, dating will be over. I will just be content to be a widow, be quilting and doing my thing and not worrying about anything because he's kind of obsessional in his own way. He was ranting about this airline ticket he wanted me to buy so they could meet his friend in Indonesia. And he didn't understand the way airline miles work. And I had to explain to him what it was and how many miles we got and how it just is not going to be because the airlines we fly out of Liberia to DC don't fly to where he's going. So there would be no benefit to trying to buy a ticket through them. In fact, Delta said, nope, we don't go there. And I do fly Delta quite a bit, not all the time, but I like Delta. My daughter likes, what's that one that got in all that trouble over the holidays? No, Southwest. She likes Southwest. I've flown Southwest a couple times. I'm not super impressed. I fly United a fair amount. I fly American a fair amount because of all of those. Uh, because when I start looking to go back home, I look for the best deal. That's just me. If it's going to be cheap, I'll do it. And with discounts last time and all of that, going back to Virginia for my daughter's wedding, I paid $59 for my ticket from here to DC. I worked a credit I had with a discount, and I got a real low ticket. So for KJ, it would be 30. I don't know if she would ever work there. Okay, because she says she doesn't like those things. And yeah, I don't. And yesterday was kind of awful in another way. Yesterday and the day before, because there's a lady, El Rubin, I think is her name on Twitter, that pulls all the Los Angeles area filings related to 7M and shares them. And yesterday, they were terrible people on WOACB Reddit that were pulling her documents and reloading them without giving her any credit. And she pays for these things. And nobody credits her. They just take it, and it's a game of, I'm the first one to post about this, which is silly. I'm sick of these guys generalizing all American women. Celine, I am too. And my son fell in with those people for a while, and I was like, no. Do you think your sister's like that? Do you think I'm like that? We had to have a lot of conversations about that. I think now he's become disenchanted with them. But for a while, I was like, incel life for life, incel life for life for life, you know? And I was like, no, quit listening to Jordan Peterson. It's not going to do you any good at all. And he did finally, because it was just ridiculous. He saw a little light. And I think that's really one of the big problems that we have online too, is that people generalize each other. And quite frankly, it's really hard to do that. The only thing I've found here in Costa Rica to generalize the expat community is everybody is running from something. Everybody. Oh, Dances in the Rain. Um, just keep checking. Check Google Flights. I sometimes will hit some deals there. One time I flew from DC to DC to Texas, and I paid $56 a flight. I think that was on Southwest or Republic, one of those. I caught a bargain and was able to do it quickly. And that was good because my mother-in-law was dying. I watched a YouTuber named Filipina P, and she interviewed a guy in his 60s, and he said the youngest he'll date is 35. Like at least it's not early 20s. Yeah, I know that. And these guys here crack me up in the expat community because they show up looking for love in all the wrong places. And one of the things that made me laugh the hardest the other night was my husband. It was kind of funny. I went to sit down. I stuck my cane on one side. I put my purse on the other, and I started pointing my rear end to the stool. And just as I put both of them down and started to come around, my husband sat down there. So I picked up my purse and I whopped him with it in front of everybody and was picking on him and sat down next to him. But everybody was laughing, and my friend Ghislaine said, well, that's a married couple for you. And started picking on everybody, wanting to know who was married there. And they were all going, I'm single. And it was kind of funny because one of those guys I know is only separated. The other guy I know, who's like this very annoying evangelical Christian, who was trying to claim singlehood, I reminded her, it's like, you're married. Your wife is in a nursing home in California with Alzheimer's, but you're here. You're not single. So they had a table full of guys who weren't necessarily single, who were trying to claim single status. I was like, nope. So it was pretty funny. A lot of these guys are fat too. They aren't George Clooney. Many of them are out of shape, yet get these beautiful young women, and it's like, what the, yeah. Celine, I think it's because these guys promise these girls the world. Now, there's an age gap between my husband and myself. When I met him, he was, he's 9 years older than I, like 9.5. And but at that point in my life, I had done a lot of living. By the time I was 23, I'd been married and divorced. I had played in a band. I'd done all kinds of different things. I was going to school and I had my eyes on the prize. I was looking for a permanent relationship with somebody who was more mature than the guys in my orbit in my own age group. And I met my husband, and that was it. My friends were like, how can you marry this old man? And I was like, he's the right speed for me. I'm just soaking up all life has to offer at 23. That's what you should do. That's exactly what you should do. You should decide where that is for you. I knew I didn't want to be alone. I wanted to be in love with somebody, but I didn't marry him until I was almost 27 because I was still living some of my life too, and I was traveling and doing different things that I wanted to do. And he was adventurous. He likes to travel. We used to live in Europe. We travel all over. We're talking now about next summer, Europe, Asia, Russia. That's what we're talking about doing. And I would like to do that. I have friends in Tokyo that I have never visited. I've never been there. I'm talking to a guy at work, but my only concern is he doesn't have his license. I got mine at 18. Yeah, that's a red flag. That is really a red flag unless it's someplace like NYC. Then I could see maybe not having your license at that age. But that's what's going on with me. I'm just stepping back from all the drama. I'm stepping back from Michelle and Tomageddon, even though I'm praying she didn't lose her foot. No, I'm in the suburbs and he's 27. Yeah, he should have a license, 27. He really should. In suburbs, you almost have to drive. Here, you really don't have to drive. We have lots and lots. If you ever come to Costa Rica, we have lots and lots and lots and lots of public transportation. There's the bus. I've ridden the bus many times. There's what we call collectivos or parata taxis. They're taxis that are run by guys that are illegally, but you can get where you're going for like $1, $2 tops. Cars are super expensive here. I mean, super expensive. We paid about 12,000 more for our car than we would have paid in the States. It's not currently recommended for Americans to travel to Russia. I know that. He's a Russian linguist, so he speaks Russian quite well. They are subject to harassment and arbitrary law enforcement. Java man, I'm familiar with that too, but I'm talking to him now about these places. They don't recommend you go to Indonesia either right now because of the possibility of terrorist attacks. There have like been attacks on Americans by Islamists in Indonesia. So I'm not thrilled with that idea either. So we're just talking. I know that Tokyo is doable, maybe there. I don't want to be a jack. We planned a date. And he was moving too quickly. He told his parents about us. We didn't even have our stay at the Oh, don't you hate it when they move that fast? Don't you hate it? My husband confessed to me a couple of years back, and it kind of made me laugh, that he was ready to marry me any point after the first month. I was kind of running away and not wanting to do that right away. I wanted to have a relationship that would lead that direction, but I was not ready to do that after a month. If he has the Spanish language degree, then that's already a license for everything. Well, what has she done with that? She doesn't even work in her field. She's never worked in her field. You just can't. Yeah, so my husband and I were talking about that last night, about how when you go to college, you have to pick something where you can actually work in your field. I did not. My son did not. I know tons of people who have not and have gone into super debt and will never be able to pay off their degree. We were talking yesterday about a little girl I know that's a friend of my daughter, that was one of the attendants in the wedding has a degree in photography. And while she's a wonderful photographer, she has not been able to parlay that into a job in photography at all, which is a shame when you have your passion and you can't do anything. I don't know what it is with my generation not wanting to have sex or get their license or do things. I don't know either, Celine, because I'm watching my son, who is 34 now, do the whole failure to launch as far as like finding a permanent relationship. I don't think he's had like 2 or 3 serious relationships. He's real shy. I know that. He's quite shy. So whoever he goes out with has to literally make the first move and show him that they like him first. And that was one thing that college was good for him, because he got him to live in the dorm, and he was having to interact with other people and having to do his own laundry and having to clean up after him. So it was funny. I got a lot of calls that were like, "Mom, help." So it's really funny, the differences between generations, because my generation, we couldn't wait to get our driver's licenses. And when I was young, you could get a learner's at 14, and I did right away, because I wanted to be able to drive. I wanted to be able to drive everywhere. And with my mother, it was really needed. There really needed to be more than one driver in the household. Uh, the sex thing I could see waiting on, and I always tell people, don't let anybody pressure you into that. Do it when you're ready. When I was young, it was the whole free love movement, the leftover of the 60s. And while, if that's what you want to do, go for it. I don't think it worked out well for a lot of people. All I could focus on 16, 18 was getting my license, and finally got 18. That was all a lot of us could focus on, getting our license. I'm still waiting for the right person and don't regret it. Yeah, you should wait. You should. You absolutely should wait for the right person. And don't rule anybody out. When I met my husband, he was getting ready to go in the military in multiple degrees. He was waiting. He was on the late entry program. He was working at a 7-Eleven type convenience store when I met him. My mother made me wait 3 months after I was allowed to get my permit, and I was impatiently freaking out. I'm sure you were. Liz, that happens. I'm not waiting for marriage. Yeah, don't wait for marriage. But I'm waiting for the right person. That's what you should do anyway. That's what I told my kids. So I finally let my husband see my book last night. I finally let him see more than me just reading the thing to it. And he said I have good storytelling skills, but he got on to me because some things weren't 100% grammatically correct. And I said, dude, I know that. I said, I know the audience I'm writing for. I know that how to tell the story. I know that I can't use big words. Big words are a killer when you're writing, unless you're writing specifically to a certain level of viewers. It's so scary to guys to hear you're waiting for the right person, other than hearing you're waiting for marriage, because it makes guys scared. Yes, absolutely. It does. It does. And I think it's unrealistic. That's one thing in Quiverful that was really frustrating to me. And it was frustrating to me to kind of be a gatekeeper of that. Being forced to be told I was a gatekeeper of that was the whole purity movement. I had so many friends that worked in the abstinence thing. That was their ministry. And that's okay to say wait till marriage. It's okay, but the way it is phrased, the way they treat it, the way they act about it is just ridiculous. Transitioning? No, I did not. No, I did not. Um, Celine, you scared away a lot of good guys by saying it's waiting for marriage. Yeah, that happens too. I know I scared off some guys, and I had some guys that I purposely scared off. I had a date one time with this guy that hounded me for dates, followed me everywhere. He would show up at my classes at LSU with roses and stuff. It was just like, dude, I will never go out with you. I told him that for a long time. He was not very intelligent, number one. And I always liked smart guys. He was kind of entitled. He was a rich kid. He was very entitled. So he started almost stalking me. And I finally decided to go out with him because he just would not leave me alone. And I thought, well, I'm going to do reverse psychology on this guy. And I did. I went out with him. He took me to a really expensive restaurant. I ate 2 entrees and a dessert. And I drank a lot of wine and brought stuff home as doggy bags and behaved very poorly. And I told him over wine about how when we got married, I wanted to have 20 children. So I just went overboard and said, when am I going to meet your parents? I'm going to need a sizable rock. I ordered lobster and a steak, Java man. And an entree. I mean, and an appetizer and a dessert. And I was like rolling out there going, oh, and I was real skinny back then. And it was purposeful. When I said, when am I going to meet your parents? And I'm going to need a big rock. And let's plan our wedding. Will we live near your parents' plantation house in Lafayette? What are we going to do here? If he had been a wolf with his foot in the trap at that point, he would have chewed off his paw to get away from me. It was the funniest thing I had ever seen. And he just ran the F away from me, and I never had to deal with his ass ever again. And I was glad because he had turned into just an annoyance for the last 6 months. So I ran him off. I used a little reverse psychology, and God knows I had a bunch of awful dates, but this was the first time I ever was purposely awful on a date. Don't forget, you also need a Bentley. I told him I need 2 Bentleys, probably. Um, yeah, so that ran him off. Sometimes these guys that are just insistent and pushy, you have to find a way to turn that off. A lot of these patriarchal guys, not all of course, tend to be very racist. Yes, they do. That's like a feature, not a bug. A lot of them are. And I was lucky in those days. I was not dating patriarchal guys. I wasn't dating Christian guys. I was just dating whoever struck my fancy at the time. My mother kept telling me just to date wealthy men. And I did for a while date mostly wealthy older guys, and it was just not good. One of the things, the lessons I took away is if you date a wealthy older guy, he's going to make you earn every perk he gives you. He's going to work your last nerve. He's going to make the kind of demands that younger guys will not make. Like any type of support I'll have towards a black man in their spaces online, I get side-eyed. Yes, that's what's so funny. Bill Gates likes to hang out with Epstein. Yes, he did. And the thing is, Java man, that Epstein thing, well, he didn't kill himself. Somebody executed him because he just had too much dirt on too many famous people. I would like to see the guys that were regulars at his parties at the very least investigated, if not prosecuted. And I mean guys like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, all these guys. Alan Dershowitz was one that was big time at his party, supposedly. These guys, they all were doing this stuff and they need to be punished for it. Even Bill Gates, even the super rich, super rich. And yeah, these guys. So I wish Ghislaine Maxwell would sing like a bird and give them all the evidence they need to prosecute, even though she too needs to be punished. And she's now away in jail, thank goodness. But of course, the guys are getting away with it. I prefer to stick to my own if I do date out. It's an Asian or Hispanic because there's less pushback I get. Yeah, I could understand that, Celine. I grew up in South Louisiana, and when I grew up, even though I did have lots of close black male friends, and I had someone I was actually attracted to, that she said, if it wasn't for my family, I'd date you. But my family is so insane. My father, I blow a gasket in his brain, and I have to put up with my father. And so I didn't date outside my own outside my own race much, maybe a little bit. I also had a Vietnamese guy that I dated a couple times because he was super persistent. And he treated me quite well, but I just wasn't interested in any kind of serious relationship at the time. So he was kind of peeved. He's another one that took me to a super expensive place and ordered me steak and lobster. Yes, Will complains that she has no privacy in prison and they're always watching her even when she showers. The prison doesn't want any screw ups like last time, of course. Black people, from my experience, are more open to interracial dating than white people are. They definitely are. Hey, Grace Peter, I'm just talking about random stuff now. Asian guys have always been nice to me. They're nice and respectful, and I think that that's something that a lot of white guys are very entitled. That I've noticed, and when I was dating, so I was just like really turned off and wouldn't date them. And I seem to have a freak magnet. I would attract the freakiest guys, the freakiest of the freaky. Because the guy that I ran off by telling him I wanted to get married immediately was pretty strange. So I had a pile of dates from hell. I've talked about that before too. I had a guy that I dated that was the UPS guy. It was quite nice, good job, made good money, and there was some chemistry there. But I only dated him once because his ex-wife showed up with all the kids during our date and was cursing and crying, and she was drunk as a skunk. And I just told him, I said, I don't want that in my life. I don't want that in my life. My father told me he'd rather me than gay than date a non-white guy. My first boyfriend was black. Actually, all my boyfriends before my husband were black or Hispanic, and my sister married a Filipino guy. I bet your dad was flipping a lid with that. You know, that was one thing that was interesting to me about when my husband came on the scene and I started dating him seriously. My father actually shut up. He never liked any of my boyfriends. He liked my husband because my husband's parents were professors at LSU and they had some money and they lived in the right part of town. So he was actually my first boyfriend I had that my father was not flipping out and saying, you can't date that person. The first one, and here he comes. So I better get off because I told him I was going to do a video and explain why I was no longer talking about KJ and why I'm blocking everybody that's fighting and doing KJ. I'm just muting all the people with KJ because I may at some point feel mentally healthy enough to start looking at that again. You know, I was going to go to Minnesota for the trial, but he is pretty much opposed to that. We will see. All I can say is everybody in Costa Rica, all the badly behaved Americans are giving me plenty of good fodder to write a second book if I ever go back and finish with this one that is turned into the great white whale. Okay, you guys, it was good talking to you. I'm going to put up a all-purpose statement. I'm going to put up a like a message for anybody contacting me for all that and just say, look, don't contact me about that because I can't really talk about it anymore. The more I talk about KJ and the more I look at this stuff, the more I look at Michelle and her black toe and a bunch of other stuff, the more depressed I get. And that is not what I want. Love you guys. Take care. I'll be back. I've got things to say about all kinds of crazy stuff that aren't KJ related.